When creating content, do you find it difficult to get people to realize why you're different, how you're different, or that you even are different? Well, in this episode, we talk about how to bust out of that using mastery and thought leadership. So if you're interested in that, keep on listening.
Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today we're talking about influencers versus thought leaders and what the heck is mastery and why is it so important. So I'm just going to start off by making a couple things clear. Number one is that this episode and the things I'm going to be talking about are going to be more for the expert-based business. So if you have a course, a program, a service that's based off your expertise. So like maybe you're a weight loss coach or a parenting coach or a business coach, or even if you just own a local based business around some kind of expertise that you have, like a coffee shop or lawn care or whatever it is, right? Like there's some kind of expertise and you're delivering that expertise in a service, a course, or a program. This episode is more for you. Now, I want to be very clear that there are also businesses that are what I would call facilitators. And what I mean by this is you maybe have a membership site and you're a great facilitator, like you can create a very good community. So maybe you're someone who has a membership site for parents, but you're not actually a parent, but you're very, very good at facilitating a community and bringing in the right experts. This episode is not for you. If you are that facilitator type of business, this is not for you. So don't pay attention to what I'm talking about this episode. However, if you are someone who has a business because of an expertise, you are an expert, this episode is for you. And it really is about finding mastery in what it is. And to kick it off, I'm going to talk about the difference between an influencer and a thought leader. And one of the reasons why is because, and specifically for the course-based business or the online business space, like the online education space, which is what I classify myself in as being owning an online education company, there's been this thought, or I guess this idea or society norm, or I guess industry norm is a better way to put it, that we need more followers in order to be successful. And there's been a huge push and a huge focus on how do we get you more followers, because we just instinctively assume that more followers equals more sales. And although having a big organic following can definitely help you generate more sales, it doesn't guarantee it. And there's a lot of people out there that have a huge following but no sales. And I think one of the reasons why is because a lot of people garner or build big followings for things outside of their expertise. So for example, they're entertainers, or they're really funny, or they just do things that are really popular and people tend to like them. But when it comes to selling, they can't really sell anything because they built a following off of entertainment versus their expertise. And there's a difference between thought leader and influencers. I think thought leaders can be influencers, but just because you're an influencer doesn't mean you're a thought leader. And thought leaders are people that see their industry or their niche or their space differently. They can identify, here's what's outdated. I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to change it. They can look at the space from like a bird's eye view, and they can see what everyone else is doing so that they can do things differently. And that's really what I do. As I look at our space and I look at the industry and I look at how content's been taught and I look at how messaging's been taught, and I can look at from a bird's eye view and go, what's missing? What have people not realized before? And let me help them realize it. Let me help them not only realize it, but let's give frameworks and let's give structure. Let's give processes to maneuver them out of those scenarios. And that's what a thought leader does, is they get people to see things differently. Why? Because they see things differently. And my question to you is, are you able to see things differently inside of your space? Or are you just regurgitating information that you've heard? Are you regurgitating buzzwords? Are you regurgitating courses and books that you've read? Or do you actually genuinely see the space differently? Do you see what's missing? Do you see why people are getting stuck? Do you see what information is outdated? And do you know how to maneuver people out of those outdated methods and into a new and better, more efficient way? That's what a thought leader is. That's what a thought leader does. And when someone has that thought leadership, they usually can see things differently because they have a level of mastery of what they're doing. And I remember listening to a podcast episode as I was driving to, where was I going? Bishop, to go camping with Matt and a couple buddies. And I was listening to a podcast where I think it was How I Built This is one of the few podcasts that I actually listened to. And Gary Vaynerchuk was on there, and I almost didn't listen. To the episode because I feel like I've gotten everything from Gary that, that I needed to get. Let's just put it that way. Which is actually a pretty not great way of looking at things, because there's always opportunity for learning, which was a great lesson I learned by listening to this episode, because I learned a really great lesson. And I remember Gary talking about when he went to go work inside of his dad's liquor store. I think it was a liquor store back then. And they were, how to focus on, I think they're moving all the focus to wine. I don't know if they quite had made that shift yet, but he started looking at the way his dad had the layout in the store, and he's looking at what did they want to move and what did they not want to move? What did they want to sell more of? What did they not want to sell more of? And he started to realize that his dad was selling all the stuff that they wanted to move. The wine bottles that they wanted to sell were at the back of the store. And he's like, well, Dad, if we're trying to sell more of that, we should restructure it and move them to the front, because that's where people are going to be coming in first. And his dad's like, okay, whatever, move it however you want. So he started moving it up there. And then he started to realize, hey, Dad, if we actually structure the showcases this way, it will funnel people to the left of the store and actually cause them to have to do an entire lap around the store, seeing all the different deals, and we can structure things in a better way. And when he starts to tell this story, you start to hear that he learned that concept or the idea to do that from when he was selling baseball cards. When he was selling his baseball cards, he started to realize, well, when you go into the convention center, the people in this spot would actually get more sales because there's more traffic over there. And then he started to realize when you lay out the baseball cards in a certain way or a certain order, the ones at a certain spot end up selling more. So he started to realize the importance of positioning things based off of foot traffic, based off of positioning where eyeballs are going to go. And he brought that to the store. Now, the reason I bring that up is because there's a level of mastery, even at the age of 14 or however old he was, for Gary to look at the store and have a deeper knowing of how to move product that the person who had no level of mastery, no experience, no knowing, wouldn't have been able to have. Now, when I look at Gary, even at the age of 14, and I look at what he was able to do, and I have him compete against even a 40 or a 50-year-old who's never had the experience of selling things on the floor like that, Gary would be able to outmaneuver, out-teach, out-communicate that other person because of his mastery of the craft, the mastery and experience and the knowing that he has. He's a thought leader. He was able to look at the store differently and see what was missing and see what was lacking and then change it. He had the level of mastery and knowing to be able to change it, know how to change it, and he's still testing and tweaking. So they started to sell more of that product. Now, when the story continues and the episode continues, something else came up. Email marketing. So he started to see the space differently, where technology was starting to come into place and no one else wanted to do that. No one else took advantage of it. So he started to learn and started to test it and tweak it. And then he wouldn't let a customer leave without them giving his email address. And within the first year, they had an email list of over 20,000 people. So again, he's getting that knowledge, he's getting that mastery, but he's focusing on things that no one else can see. He's looking at the space differently. He's looking at it from a bird's eye view. Then what he started doing is realizing, hey, no one out here, all my competitors do not have an email list. This is our advantage. What they're still doing is they're advertising all their specials in print. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at all of their specials. I'm going to put it into a spreadsheet. I'm going to look at what we have, and then I'm going to undercut all of their specials and blast it to my email list. And when he started doing that, he started taking in all of this business because they were the ones that had the lowest prices, and no one could compete with them because they didn't know what he was doing. He was outmaneuvering people without them even realizing what he was doing. And when you are a thought leader and when you have mastery of your craft, you are able to outmaneuver people because they can't see what you're doing. You have a level of mastery over what you're doing. And I talk about this even with connection videos. When I tell you to do a connection video, and I tell this to our students, do a connection video. But let me be very clear. A connection video is not a motivational or inspirational video. However, your competitors will think that they are. I literally tell our students this inside our program. When you do a connection video, your competitors will look at that and go, they are doing a motivational video. I'm just going to do motivational videos. But you're not doing a motivational video. You're doing things like releasing identities, releasing beliefs, and releasing core values, because that is where true subconscious connection is actually formed. But your competitors won't know that because they can't see it. They don't have the level of mastery. And what I'm doing is I'm giving my level of mastery over messaging to our students so that they can outmaneuver their competition without their competition even knowing what they're doing. And I want you to be able to do the same thing. I want you and your work and your content to be so deep that you're actually doing things differently without anyone realizing what you're even doing. This is thought leadership. Thought leadership allows you to do that. Now, the thing that most people will get to is, or the question that they come up with is like, well, how do I get to the level of mastery? What do I do? How do I get there? And there's a couple of ways to get there. Number one is experience. Like something that you have a lot of experience in will give you some level of mastery. This is also what I call the knowing. There's a difference between knowledge and knowing. Knowledge is the difference. Knowledge is like, hey, I've read 25 books on how to ride a bike, but I've never actually ridden the bike. And knowing is I've been riding a bike for 25 years. I actually know how to ride the bike. You can communicate things differently, deeper than everyone else. Okay. So that's really the first thing. But I believe to my core that the true thought leaders, the people that have true mastery, not only have the knowledge, yes, they have the knowledge and they have the experience and they have the knowing, but they also have the purpose and passion behind what they're doing as well. The people that I believe have true mastery are the ones that are living their purpose at the same time. Now, I want to be very clear about purpose. Here's my definition or interpretation of purpose, is that I think a lot of people get confused and they think my purpose, like there's one purpose of what I'm here to do. My life is coming down to this one purpose. And I don't think people have one purpose. I think people have multiple purposes that they fulfill within their life. And I don't think purpose is always career driven either. A lot of people think that purpose is career driven. Whoops, sorry, I dropped my pen. Career driven, or they think it's like their work per se. And it can be, for a lot of people it is. But I'm going to give an example from my wife. As long as I've known my wife, she's always told me, like, I want to be a mom. I want to be a mother. I want to be a mother. I want to be a mom. And I would say that was her purpose. During that period of her life, that was her purpose. And then we had our first child, and then we had our second. And after our second, I was like, no way, we're not having any more kids. Like, two's enough. This is this is way harder than I would have thought. I'm tired all the time. Our kids are 3 and 5. They're self-sufficient. They can go in the backyard and they can play, and we can actually sit down and have a glass of wine. Like, why would we start all over again? I don't want this. And she said, because I can feel it. My purpose has been to be a mom. I know there's a third kid. My intuition is firing. I just know that this is what we need to do. I would argue that her purpose was to be a mom to those 3 kids, because the second we had our 3rd kid, not the second, about a year and a half, our daughter is about a year and a half. Once our daughter was born, she's about a year and a half, I am starting to witness my wife's purpose start to shift and change. She wants to focus on something more meaningful. What's next? But it's not even just the idea that she wants to do something else. It's that this internal driver has literally shifted inside of her. This internal driver of your purpose is to be a mom, be a mom, be a mom. That purpose has been fulfilled. So now she's moving and evolving to a new purpose. And I don't know what that is. She'll uncover that, or we'll uncover it together. Or actually, I can't help her with it. I can support her in it, but she'll have to do that work herself. But she's going to have to uncover what that is. And the reason why I tell this story is because sometimes we think purpose is a career-driven thing, and it's not always a career-driven thing. A purpose is this internal driver that is inside of you of something that you want to go do and accomplish. It's not always a career-driven thing. But I do believe that the people that have thought leadership and can change their space do have a level of mastery. And I think mastery comes from experience, but also living in your purpose at the same time. Because when you live in your purpose and you're in your dharma, you can actually see things that others can't see. When it comes to messaging, you have to understand, I have no formal training in messaging. I have no formal training in psychology. I have no formal training in anything that I'm helping people with today. But I know in this moment, this is my purpose of what I'm here to do. And I know down the road, my purpose will shift and change as well. But when I read a book, I can literally see, quote unquote, see what the author is doing to make their point heard and allow the subconscious mind to go, oh yeah, I agree. In fact, this whole idea that we should be creating content to the subconscious mind was never taught to me. I started to look and read books, and I started to look, wow, this person made me agree with them without me even having to think about it. Oh my gosh, they're communicating to the subconscious mind. Let's break down what they're doing. Let me read more books. Let me look at more of this. And I can literally see what people are doing when they talk, during TED Talks, during speeches, during books, during TV shows, during whatever, to literally see what they're doing. And because I'm able to see, because I'm leaning into what my purpose is, what comes easily to me, and I combine that with experience and knowing, I'm now getting a deeper level of mastery, but I'm able to become a thought leader because I can see things differently than everyone else. And I do think that a lot of people don't lean into what their purpose is or what they see or what they get very easily. And it kind of hurts them because they can never reach that level of thought leadership that they want to get to. This could look like a pivot inside of your business and you just want to stay, doing what you've been doing for all these years, or you want to stay comfortable, which is all fine. Again, you can be successful doing that. If you want to be the thought leader, you have to be able to live in that purpose, live in that passion, lean into what you see differently than everyone else or what you get very easily, combine it with knowing and experience. And my wife and I just did a mini staycation. We just went to a little hotel down the road from us. And my wife got a massage, and she goes, that massage was the best massage I've ever had in my entire life. The lady just knew exactly where to go. She knew exactly how much pressure to use. She knew it was just like next level. It was like nothing I've ever experienced before. And to me, that's mastery. That's mastery of your craft. That lady would probably be able to teach things differently, become a better teacher, communicate things differently. And usually the best teachers in the world are the ones that have some level of mastery over their craft. So let's talk about this. How do we start to maintain this mastery, become thought leaders? Well, step one we've already talked about is to lean into a passion or an interest or something that comes very easily to you. That's the first step. Because if it comes easily to you and you already kind of see things a little bit differently, it's going to allow you to move through and reach a level of mastery at a whole nother rate. For example, messaging comes easy to me. I've already talked about this. I talk about how I can read a book and I can see what the author's doing, or I can look at a talk and just see what they're doing. It comes very easy to me. I don't know why, it just does. However, if I decided I want to have a level of mastery over baseball or soccer, let's just use soccer. Soccer doesn't come easy to me. I hated soccer as a drop my pen again, as a kid. I hated soccer as a kid. It didn't come easy to me. I don't understand it. I see the ball moving on the field. I don't intuitively know like where I should be running or positioned. I can go play soccer all day long. And yeah, I will be, if I'm more dedicated and I develop the craft, I will be able to have a deeper level of knowing and a deeper level of thought leadership and a deep, like some level of mastery over the craft. But I'm never going to be able to compete against the person who just intuitively, naturally can see the game differently than me. They can see 5 steps ahead of me. It's the same thing with chess. I can go and study chess and play chess and be dedicated to chess and be a great chess player, but there's going to be someone who can just see the board differently than I can. And they will have a deeper level of mastery and thought leadership that I'll just never be able to reach. So we have to lean into these things that come easy to us, or that we get that we have a heavy interest in, or the things that allow us to see things already from the beginning that most people can't see. But that can only take you so far, right? Even if you are that person who's like, oh, just gets it very easily, you're very gifted in that thing, you still need to have knowing and not knowledge. You'll still need repetition, because if you want to be a master at something, you need repetition and you need dedication. And it's a lifelong thing, because mastery is actually a lifelong thing that never has an end goal. Because when you finally master something and you start teaching it and it becomes a standard, eventually everyone else will take it on as a norm. So for example, when we created thought reversals, I would say that was a level of mastery that it took to come up with thought reversals. Well, thought reversal is actually becoming a standard inside of the space. I know multiple people that are teaching it inside of their courses and their programs. So this level of this new concept, this new thing that I created from a level of mastery is now becoming the norm. The same thing with the hero's journey. Hero's journey took a level of mastery to be able to create, because he saw something differently. But now it's an industry norm. So mastery needs to be something that's always evolving and always growing. Your craft needs to always be growing. So that's going to take repetition. It's going to take testing. It's going to take tweaking. It takes dedication. And one of the ways that I like to look at this is that we don't look at, our work as content. I don't look at our work as a course. I don't look at it as content. I actually look at it as IP. This is my intellectual property. This is my work, not my course. This is my work. I'm going to create something different. I'm going to create something better. I'm going to use my mastery and knowing and experience to create something that is so unique and so different that it is literally going to be my IP. And it's basically helps me build and raise awareness. So when you want a level of mastery, when you want to be a thought leader, let me just recap the 2 steps before we go to the next piece of this, is that it generally is going to have some kind of passion or something that comes easy to you or something that you see differently, number 1. Number 2, once you know what that is, which most of you might already know what that is, probably the field you're in right now, there needs to be some level of knowing. You want deeper knowing. You want more experience. You want more repetition, because every time you repeat something or you try it again or you're dedicated to it, you learn more and more things. You raise your awareness to more things. And then that brings me to the third point, is that if you want to be a thought leader, this is kind of wrapped into number 1, is there has to be some level of intuition. Again, from my experience, if you want to lean into becoming a thought leader or, have a level of mastery, there has to be some level of intuition. This is why we want to focus on what comes easy to you. Because your intuition is your internal guidance. Sometimes you can just see things differently than everyone else, right? Or you can feel things differently. You know something's going to work or not work, and you don't really have a logical explanation for it. You just know it. You can feel it. That's your intuition. Your intuition can guide you to thought leadership, to mastery. It's this internal guidance that kicks in. But you can't just depend on your intuition all the time. And I'm going to talk about that next. But first, let's talk about how do we develop that intuition. Number one is you want to get very silent. And I just mean quieting the mind. I talk about this all the time. Silence is key. Silence is golden. When you're in the shower, you guys probably have shower thoughts like, oh, the best ideas, the best this, the best whatever. Or you're in meditation and ideas come in, or you're just like, maybe you're running or on a jog and you're not thinking anything and the best ideas come in. That's because you're silent. That's because the thinking mind is shut off and it lets the best ideas come in. It lets you to think outside the box. Most people will shut off the intuition or say their ideas are stupid and never follow through with it. But you don't want to shut it out. You want to respect them. And you want those thoughts to be unrealistic, because if they're unrealistic, it means you're thinking outside the box of normal. Look, if you're trying to create something you've never created before, you can't do it with inside the box thinking. If you're trying to create something outside the box, you can't do it with inside the box thinking. So when we're silent and our mind just gives us these ideas and they seem unrealistic, that's a great sign. That's your intuition hitting and firing. But what I want you to do is I want you to look at the work that you do. And when you start working with clients and you start working with students and you start working with more and more people, and you're doing the thing that you get that comes very easy to you, you're getting a level of mastery because you're repeating it all the time. I want you to pay attention to those intuition moments. You're working with a client and you just know, that's it. Yep, that is what that person needs to do. Or this is going to be really good. Or, oh my gosh, this client's going to absolutely crush it right now. What I want you to do is it's very easy for a lot of people to go, oh, my intuition just told me that. I can't teach it because my intuition was the thing guiding me there. And although that's true, what I believe to my core, because I've done this, is to break down everything about that scenario that made your intuition fire. Break down all the elements. What was occurring? What happened? What happened inside of that person's work or what that person said that you knew was going to be really good? And that's what happens with me with messaging. I can read a piece of content, see a piece of content, work with a client with their messaging. And although on paper it checks all the boxes, I can intuitively know it's not there yet. There's something missing. And then when we finally get it, I go, yes, now we have it. Most people will say, well, that's my intuition. I can't teach my intuition. And I say, yes, you can. And a lot of people get into this space where they're like, well, I can't bring on coaches. I can't bring on employees. I can't bring on people because my intuition is what's guiding me. And although that's true, look at every scenario your intuition is firing on and break down all the elements and do it over and over and over and over again. And I promise you, when you do it 10 times and you break down all the elements that were going on in that scenario that made your intuition fire, you will start to see patterns in the elements that made your intuition fire. I promise you that. Yes, it was a feeling. Yes, it was intuitive. Yes, it was intuition. Yes, it was just like this thing that hit you. But there was something that was happening that caused the intuition to fire. Yes, it could be a spiritual experience, but it's not always a spiritual experience. It could be a subconscious driven thing that you're not aware of yet. And we have to bring it into your awareness, and jotting down and breaking down the elements of what's going on can bring the subconscious into your awareness from subconscious to conscious. Okay. So that's the last and final step, is if we want thought leadership, is we start to have to put structure to all of this. We have to put structure to things that are your passion, to your deep knowing and knowledge and things you're repeating and things you're learning and new things in your awareness. But we also have to bring structure to your intuition. And those are the three things that have to come together for a lot of thought leadership. If you want mastery, you want thought leadership, there's three things that have to come together. Is number one, it's the deep knowing, and knowing is created through repetition, putting things into action, dedication, implementation, and experience. When we repeat, we're dedicated, we implement, we have a lot of experience, we gain deep knowing. When we have deep knowing and we combine that also with our intuition, and we can literally break down what's causing our intuition to fire, well, then we can create structure around it. And the reason why you need structure is because the structure is what allows you to teach it. Thought leaders just don't change the space. They educate as well. Thought leaders do talks, they do books, they create content, they create courses, they create programs. We need a deeper knowing. We need to listen to our intuition, but we need to be able to break down the intuition, and then we need to be able to put it all into a structure so we can teach it. And when you learn how to teach it and communicate it at another level, well, now people go, oh my God, that's blowing my mind. Ahas. So what I always say is, well, look at the elements of what's going on and then give it a framework. Give it a framework that you can teach, or multiple frameworks or processes. Give it a methodology. This is thought leadership. It's a very simple concept, but it's leaning into your purpose. It's recognizing what you can see that others can't see. Repeating things, staying dedicated, implementing, gaining that deeper knowing, listening to the intuition, paying attention to the intuition, identifying what is causing the intuition to fire, and then how do I start to package all of this up into a structure that when people hear it, they go, oh my gosh, makes sense. If you want to be a thought leader, you want to have a level of mastery over something, those are the steps that you have to follow from my experience. And there are so many people out there that are so concerned with how many followers do I get, or what can I do that's going to get me more likes? And before you know it, you're entertaining for likes instead of being known for your IP, for your work, for your IP's intellectual property. And you're known for the wrong things. You're known because you can dance and point really well, like some of the TikTok trends, versus changing the space, shifting perspective, and having a level of mastery over your work so deep that no one can compete with you. And yes, it is great to pay attention to social media trends and do things like that. We do that inside of our company. But if you're doing that to compensate for your lack of mastery over your message, your content, and your work, there's only a certain level that you're going to be able to achieve. And I'm willing to bet that if you've been struggling to break out of the level that you're at, you've been plateaued, people aren't paying attention to your content. Yes, you're probably doing too many tutorial-based videos, but there's also probably been a lack of mastery and thought leadership as your focus when it comes to content creation, your course, your program, and your messaging. Willing to bet that. May not be true for all of you, but I'm willing to bet it's true for a lot of you. So focus on those 4 things. And if you're listening to this episode and you had some ahas or questions, all you need to do is slide into our DMs at I am Brandon Lucero and ask, or post a story on Instagram, tag us, and let me know. Thank you guys for listening. I'll see you on the next episode.
Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.